April 1865. The air in Richmond, Virginia was thick with the scent of burning paper and impending defeat. General Robert E. Lee's lines were shattering, and the collapse of the Confederate capital was imminent. The resulting panic, the exodus of government officials, frantic citizens, and retreating military units created a perfect screen of chaos. Within this historical maelstrom lay one of the most significant and least documented maneuvers of the war, the evacuation of the Confederate Gold Reserve. This was not just treasury cash, it was the final desperate repository of the Confederacy's economic future. Gold, silver, and specie raised through European bonds and private donations, totaling an estimated value of several $million, an astronomical sum for the era. The survival of the reserve was considered paramount, a last-ditch attempt to continue the war effort from an unassailable location, or at least provide leverage for negotiation. The official records of the evacuation are intentionally vague, speaking of transportation of government property, but the true story lies in the contrast between the highly visible movement of military assets and the clandestine journey of the unmarked freight. The screen of military chaos. On the night of April 2nd, the Richmond rail yards were a terrifying tableau of noise and disorder. Artillery pieces, exhausted troops, government files, and desperate civilians all vied for space on the last functioning rail lines heading south and west. This visible military movement served a crucial purpose: camouflage. The Gold Reserve was loaded onto a specialized train designated only as Special Provision Train 7. The train itself was unremarkable: a small locomotive, a few flatbeds carrying ammunition and light weaponry, and 4 plain, heavy boxcars. The boxcars, which contained the actual treasure, were deliberately placed toward the rear, where they were most vulnerable to delay or attack, reinforcing the illusion of low priority. Inside the 4 boxcars lay the gold, organized not in standard military strongboxes, but in simple, sturdy wooden crates. These crates were indistinguishable from those used to transport medical supplies, printing presses, or administrative archives. They were heavy, yes, but their weight was easily masked by the general overburdening of the rail line. Crucially, they bore no official markings, no stencils, no military designations, and no stenciled warnings of specie or Confederate treasury. They were literally unmarked freight. The anomaly of Provision 7. The personnel guarding the freight further emphasized the deception. Instead of a detachment of cavalry or Marines, the immediate security detail consisted of a small group of retired or partially disabled veterans, and most critically, 2 unassuming figures who were the true custodians, 2 civilian auditors. These auditors, Charles Hemmings and Samuel Price, names likely fictionalized in the few extant secondary accounts, were chosen not for their martial prowess, but for their meticulous, absolute loyalty to the financial integrity of the Confederacy. Their presence ensured that the movement of the gold was tracked not by military logbooks, but by precise, non-standard accounting methods. They were accountants first, last soldiers. The true anomaly of Provision 7 was its slow, almost painfully meticulous progress. While other military trains were ordered to prioritize speed and reach safe harbor, Train 7 frequently stopped, not for military orders, but for civilian auditors to verify landmarks, cross-reference rail mileage against handwritten logs, and occasionally to manually gauge the water level in nearby rivers. This counterintuitive delay ensured that the gold's journey was not only secretive, but precisely mapped using a unique, non-military methodology. The paper trail of deception. The unmarked freight was designed to disappear, but the logistical paper trail that followed it was designed to mislead. The official ledger. The Confederate Treasury kept an official ledger stating the gold was distributed in several directions, some to bank vaults in South Carolina, some to paying troop garrisons in the West. This ledger was a strategic lie designed to survive capture and confuse the Union pursuit, which predictably focused on the largest, most recognizable bank vaults. The actual log, the truth, was contained in a single, small, oilskin-wrapped private logbook carried by the auditor, Charles Hemmings. This book contained the genuine record, the true weight of the reserve, the specific coordinates, not latitude and longitude, but rail mile markers and local geographical features of every stop, and the final encrypted designation of the treasure's true objective. This logbook was a private, portable ledger, the key to the entire operation. The gold, under the cover of military collapse, was not being moved to a secure vault for future use. It was being moved to a pre-selected, isolated spot for permanent, temporary concealment. The journey of Provision 7 was a deliberate, slow-moving economic cryptography. The unmarked freight ensured that Union cavalry saw only another abandoned boxcar in the mud, while the auditor's detailed, methodical pacing ensured that only they possessed the temporal and spatial key to the gold's final resting place. The true story of the Confederate Reserve is not the chaos of the war, but the quiet, enduring discipline of two accountants dedicated to preserving the financial soul of a dying nation. The investigation must now follow these quiet custodians and their highly specialized, non-military methods of recording their treasonous treasure. The journey of the unmarked freight, Special Provision Train 7 across the collapsing Confederacy, was dictated not by military urgency, but by the meticulous, almost obsessive requirements of its two civilian custodians, auditors Charles Hemmings and Samuel Price. They were the true auditors of treason, the individuals entrusted with the financial soul of the dying nation. Their task was simple in concept, deliver the gold, but complex in execution. They had to ensure the treasure could be found years or even decades after the Confederacy ceased to exist, regardless of the political or geographical upheaval. Their method of ensuring future recovery was contained entirely within a single, modest volume, the secret logbook. The profile of the custodians. Hemmings and Price were anomalies in the military landscape of 1865. They were desk men, trained in double-entry bookkeeping and the cold, unromantic precision of finance. They represented the South's commitment to bureaucratic order, even in chaos. They carried revolvers, yes, but their true weapons were pen, ink, and an unparalleled understanding of the region's economic and geographic survey markers. They understood that military commanders would prioritize immediate survival and tactical expediency. Their duty, however, was to prioritize future legal validation. The secret logbook, therefore, was not merely a record of movement. It was a future title deed, designed to withstand capture, fire, and decades of legal scrutiny. The methodology of the secret logbook. The logbook itself was disguised as a personal journal, bound in plain leather and filled with mundane notes on crop yields and commodity prices. The actual location and quantity of the gold were encoded using a two-part cryptographic system that reflected the auditor's financial and geographical expertise. 1. The financial cipher, the inventory of absence. The first section of the logbook detailed the contents of the 4 boxcars. It was written as a standard inventory, but with a crucial alteration. It used negative numbers to denote the gold. Instead of listing 40 chests of specie, the entry read 40 units of liability, net deficit. The weight of the gold, for example 1,500 pounds, was recorded as a residual tonnage debt. This cipher was an inventory of absence. To anyone examining the book without the specific financial key, known only to Hemmings and Price, the log appeared to be a detailed record of the Confederacy's crippling national debt and missing assets, confirming the South's financial collapse, a historically plausible and utterly boring account. Only by understanding that residual tonnage debt translated to physical gold reserve could the true message be unlocked. This was the auditor's first defense, hiding the treasure by making its record seem like mundane proof of financial failure. 2. The geographic cipher, the chain of markers. The second section was the map itself, a chain of markers recorded during the slow, methodical journey of Train 7. Since conventional maps and military coordinates were likely to be seized and compromised, the auditors relied on fixed, non-military reference points. Rail mile markers. Instead of latitude-longitude, locations were referenced using the official state-chartered rail mile system of the Southern Railway lines, data only readily available to pre-war rail financiers and internal auditors. Geological surveys. The auditors frequently paused the train near river crossings. Their logs recorded the treasure's location not by place name, but by the depth and velocity of the nearest river at a specific time, cross-referencing this against known pre-war geological survey data. Example entry: third stop, marker 112, flow rate 4 feet per second, deposit axis 11 degrees magnetic north. Acoustic signatures. Incredibly, Hemmings recorded the specific, unique echo created by the train's whistle as it passed through certain cuts or tunnels, using the length of the echo's decay as a distance marker from the previous point. This added a layer of sensory cryptography, making the journey log personal and almost impossible to reverse engineer without being physically present. The logbook was thus a multi-layered barrier, a financial lie built upon a geographical cipher secured by bureaucratic knowledge. The finality of the treason. The work of Hemmings and Price was a profound act of sustained treason against the future. They were not simply loyalists, they were economic idealists, ensuring that even in defeat, the Confederacy retained a sovereign financial asset. Their meticulousness stemmed from the understanding that the moment they concealed the gold, their lives and the logbook became the most critical assets of the lost cause. The auditor's journey was marked by profound stillness amidst the surrounding chaos. While soldiers fought and bridges burned, they paused the train, consulting their compasses and their obscure geological tables, recording the river flow and the rail curvature. Their work was an act of quiet intellectual defiance, ensuring the gold would be protected not by guns, but by the very obscurity and boredom of their specialized financial language. The secret logbook, surviving the war years through incredible secrecy, would eventually fall into the hands of post-war historians, presenting a puzzle that defied traditional military intelligence analysis. The key to the gold would not be found in a battle map, but in the dry, tedious, and profoundly encrypted language of an accountant's private journal. The investigation now transitions to the attempt to break this complex non-military cipher and reveal the hidden location encoded within the chain of markers.
The survival of the secret logbook was a triumph of bureaucratic dedication. Its interpretation, however, became the ultimate test of historical cryptography. Dr. Elias Vance, our historian, upon securing access to the journal long after the war, understood that the location of the Confederate gold was not hidden by a traditional secret code, but by an impenetrable layering of specialized, non-military data. The auditors of treason, Hemmings and Price, had created a cipher of the cartographer, relying on the unique geological and logistical metrics of the Confederacy itself. The logbook's final section, which detailed the train's last movements and the deposit location, was written in a series of dense numerical entries and abbreviated professional jargon. Marker R145.2. Delta flow equals plus 0.3 feet per second.
Sub-gr, 11 feet south. Acoustic decay equals 4.5 sec. Final axis equals 290 degrees. Site type WD4. This was the map. It contained no place names, no landmarks recognizable to a Union cavalry scout, but only the cold, unyielding language of a surveyor's notebook. Breaking the cipher, the 3 pillars. Dr. Vance realized that the cipher was built upon 3 distinct pillars of 19th century infrastructure knowledge, each requiring specialized historical data to unlock. 1. The rail mile marker anomaly, R145.2. The marker, R145.2, represented the final crucial stop of Provision Train 7. Vance had to consult pre-war Southern States Railway archives, documents detailing the original construction and measurement of the rail lines, to identify the exact location corresponding to 145.2 miles from the main sectional terminus. This led Vance to a specific, desolate stretch of track in the coastal Carolinas, a region notable for its lack of strategic military value and its difficult, swampy terrain. This choice confirmed the auditors' methodology. They sought geographical anonymity, avoiding the obvious mountain hideouts and established fortifications. The hydrological cipher, delta flow, and sub-gr. The hydrological entries were the most deceptive. Delta flow equals plus 0.3 feet per second meant the river's flow rate had increased by 0.3 feet per second since the train's previous recorded stop. Sub-gr, 11 feet south, was the key. It meant subterranean gradient 11 degrees south. Vance's genius was in cross-referencing this against historical Army Corps of Engineers pre-war hydrological surveys. The auditors, knowing the Union would seek out obvious banks or cliffs, had deliberately selected a location where the river's bed had a specific, subtle southward slope that would only be known to engineers who had studied the original topographical data. This calculation isolated the deposit site to an area where the rail line ran directly adjacent to a shallow, slow-moving river known as the Blackwater tributary. The logbook's final section, which detailed the train's last movements and the deposit location, was written in a series of dense numerical entries and abbreviated professional jargon. Acoustic decay equals 4.5 sec. This was the auditor's final layer of security. This entry recorded the precise time it took for the train's whistle echo to completely fade after passing through a specific geographical choke point, a cut or a tunnel. This was a marker that could only be verified by returning to the exact spot. The time of 4.5 seconds corresponded directly to the distance and composition of the surrounding earthworks. Vance used modern acoustic modeling calibrated to 1865 steam whistle characteristics and the known dimensions of the Blackwater rail cut to confirm that the 4.5-second decay rate placed the deposit location precisely 120 yards south of the cut's exit. Mapping the swamps, the WD4 enigma. All 3 pillars converged onto a single tight location, a point 120 yards south of the rail cut on the Blackwater tributary, characterized by low-lying, impenetrable swamp and dense cypress growth. The final definitive entry was the site type designation. This was not military jargon. Vance finally decoded it by referencing an obscure 1850s accounting manual used by Southern rail construction firms. WD stood for water drainage, and IV referred to the 4th, deepest classification of drainage ditch used in rail construction through swamps. The gold was not in a bank, a cave, or a chest. It was buried within a man-made drainage ditch, a small submerged culvert designed to keep the rail line dry. now filled with water, mud, and the roots of the swamp. The cipher of the cartographer had been broken. The gold was hidden by bureaucratic boredom and geographical indifference. The auditors, Hemmings and Price, knew that any treasure hunter would look for dry land, high ground, and visible markers. They chose the absolute opposite, a site defined by its wetness, anonymity, and engineered purpose. The gold was not in the heart of the Confederacy. It was in the heart of its most unappealing and inaccessible terrain. The investigation now moves to the final, chilling destination, the swampland vault, guarded by the cold, enduring silence of the South's most remote waters. The meticulous, calculated journey of the Confederate Gold Reserve, the unmarked freight, concluded not with the grand arrival at a fortified bank or a mountain cave, but at the most geographically unappealing location imaginable. The decoded cipher of the cartographer pointed Dr. Vance to the WD-IV site on the Blackwater tributary, a man-made drainage ditch carved through a dense, low-lying swamp in the coastal Carolinas. This final resting place was the ultimate expression of the auditors of treason's genius. Charles Hemmings and Samuel Price knew that treasure hunters, whether Union scouts or post-war adventurers, would adhere to the classical geometry of concealment: high ground, deep shafts, and granite protection. They chose the antithesis, a site defined by its liquidity, anonymity, and engineered obsolescence. The final act of concealment. The deposit itself was characterized by the same slow, deliberate precision that marked the entire journey of Provision Train 7. The train stopped at the rail mile marker R145.2, precisely at the cut through the swamp. There was no military ceremony, no flag waving, only the heavy, quiet labor of men exhausted by war and the weight of their financial secret. The gold, still sealed in the simple, unmarked wooden crates, was lowered directly into the wide, deep water drainage ditch, WD-IV. This ditch was originally dug to prevent water from undermining the railbed. It was a permanent yet entirely unremarkable feature of the railway infrastructure. The process of concealment was methodical. Submergence. The heavy crates naturally sank into the soft, deep mud and peat at the bottom of the ditch. The water level immediately rose and flowed around the boxes, eliminating any splash or visible surface disturbance. Natural camouflage. The auditors did not use dynamite or concrete. Instead, they used the natural detritus of the swamp. Fallen cypress knees, thick beds of reeds, decaying leaves, and heavy acidic mud were carefully piled over the site. The natural siltation process of the slow-moving tributary did the rest, quickly covering the disturbance with a fresh layer of organic matter. Removal of evidence. The auditors meticulously checked the area for any sign of their presence. No discarded tools, no footprints leading away from the rail line into the swamp, and no physical marker other than the faint disturbance of the mud. Their only physical record was the final entry in the secret logbook. The swampland vault was thus sealed by biological and hydrological processes, not by steel or masonry. It was a vault that perpetually rebuilt its own defenses. The genius of the swampland vault. The strategic brilliance of the final deposit lay in its multi-layered passive protection against all forms of contemporary and future discovery. Geographical anonymity. The chosen site had zero strategic value and was not near any historical fort or known battle site. The search was guaranteed to be diverted to the more glamorous, historically significant locations in the Appalachian region. Hydrological security. The constant slow flow of the Blackwater tributary ensured that any temporary soil disturbance was erased within weeks. Furthermore, the seasonal variation of the swamp meant the exact water level, the key to the auditor's original calculations, would rarely be the same, frustrating any attempts to verify the original depth recordings. The water was the perfect mutable lock. The thermal and magnetic null. The acidic, water-saturated peat and mud provided exceptional thermal and electrical insulation. The deep water layer and the organic material would have quickly stabilized the temperature of the gold, making it virtually undetectable by early thermal imaging. The density of the ground, combined with the magnetic interference from the iron-rich black water, created a magnetic null, a shield from the simple primitive magnetometers of the post-war era. The gold was lost not because it was stolen or spent, but because it was perfectly camouflaged by the absolute indifference of the landscape. The enduring silence and the legal null. The Confederacy collapsed. The auditors died, Hemmings carrying the final uncopied logbook in his memory until his own quiet death. The result was the establishment of a legal null that mirrors the geological secrecy of the swamp. The gold became an unclaimable asset. The Union government never knew the true destination, focusing only on the deliberately misleading official ledger. The Confederacy ceased to exist as a legal entity, meaning there was no remaining sovereign body to claim the gold, even if the location were known. The resource technically belonged to a state that had vanished. The gold remains today, protected by the enduring silence of the swampland vault. The acidic water has likely destroyed the wooden crates and any outer cloth wrappings, but the gold and silver specie, non-corrosive metals, remain perfectly preserved deep within the anaerobic mud. Dr. Vance's final scholarly act was to present the decoded cipher and the confirmed location, verified using modern hydrological and magnetic surveys, to a small private consortium of historians. He, like the custodians of the Titanic's secret, concluded that the integrity of the history was more valuable than the recovery of the fortune. The chaos of the Civil War provided the screen, the genius of the auditors provided the method, and the swampland vault provided the final, unassailable protection. The gold, the financial soul of the lost cause, rests in the cold black mud, eternally guarded by the soundless flow of the Blackwater tributary. A secret preserved not by fear, but by the overwhelming, boring silence of a southern swamp.